Well, hello everyone. I hope all the audio and stuff is working correctly. As you know, this is my very first live stream. I'm so excited to be able to share this with you all. And it was made possible through all of your guys' support. This is really to celebrate you guys, for helping us all together reach this milestone of 50,000 subscribers. This is very, very special to me because I never thought, that I would actually reach this goal in less than a year. 50,000 subscribers was the number I wanted to hit by the very end of this year, and I thought that was a major reach goal. And again, like the subscriber number doesn't really matter all that much. What is really important is the impact and the community that's being built here. And I'm so happy and so grateful that this community has grown to this large. So today I want to do a couple things. First, I want to talk about what kind of my future plans are for the channel. I also want to talk about how is best to reach me, to really to be able to share and connect. And I also want to go through some of these Q&A questions that were submitted via Twitter and also via the community post that I made, and then finally from the actual the chat here. So I'm excited to kind of go through. I'll probably take mostly questions from Twitter at first, and then we'll go through and we'll work through some of the other ones. So hi everyone, hi Red Garden, hi all of these people. This is so cool that everyone's tuning in. I absolutely love this. So first I want to talk about what my plans are for the future of this channel for the rest of this year, for whatever might be going forward. I'm obviously going to keep producing a lot of the same content, very similar content to what I have been. Every Monday I've been doing a project review, project resume, portfolio review, and I think that the best way to actually learn this stuff is through good examples. I might start actually including some really good case studies that aren't just me critiquing, but me kind of celebrating some of your guys' really cool work. So if you have something that you think it's wow, this project is incredible, I would definitely check it out. I mean, for example, I think this upcoming Monday or next Monday, I'm going to do one where someone collected all of their own Spotify data and analyzed it to see if they could build an algorithm that would predict which song that they would like most or would be their next favorite song, which I think is so cool, and that's kind of what these projects should really be about, I'm also going to start trying to do more interviews. I have some really cool ones coming up that kind of answer questions that I can't. I think I'm pretty comfortable with the data science domain, but there's absolutely things that I don't know. And for everything that I don't know, I really am going to try and go out and find people that are knowledgeable about these subjects, so that we can share that information. Because I don't think any one person knows all of data science. Any one person can really master this whole domain. So for the questions that I can't answer, I'm going to try and bring people in that can support this better. The last thing I'm going to try and do is really focus on actually doing a bit more technical content. I've been in the process of moving. I've been in the process of, my day job has been very busy, so I want to make sure that I continue to do some more technical stuff, some coding, some projects. And one thing I'd like to focus on in the next couple months is a bit more on Kaggle. So I always recommend Kaggle. I think it's a great resource, but I'm preaching it a lot, but I haven't been doing that much work on Kaggle. I haven't built out my portfolio there as much as I really would like to. So I want to actually practice what I preach a bit more, and I'm hoping that you guys will hold me accountable to that. I'm stating it right now. This is something that I plan to do quite a bit more of. So before we get into the QA, I just wanted to do one more quick comment, and that's if you'd like to reach me, the best place is almost always in the YouTube comment section. I still am trying to respond to almost every comment that I have. That might change as things continue to grow, but at the very least, if that were to change, it would be something like I'd respond to every comment that's posted in the first 5 hours of the videos being posted, or I'd do more Q&A sessions like this. So I think that if you post a comment there, a lot of people have questions that are very similar, and it allows me to share that information. So rather than just answering one person at a time, I can answer many people's similar questions at the same time. And I think that that's the beauty of this platform, because realistically, between my job and making videos, I can't give as much individual attention as I would really like to. And so making videos and contributing in the comment section where anybody can read it is the best way to really share across this whole community. So let's kind of jump into this Q&A here. You know, there's a couple questions that I have. Let's see if I can actually find them and actually get in the frame. So let me quickly go through some of the chat here real quick, make sure I didn't miss anything too crazy. Thank you for all the congrats, everyone. This is, I mean, I'm over the moon. This is so cool. Okay, perfect. So I see some questions in here. I'm going to start mixing them in as I go along. So the first question that I got, which I'm sure a lot of you probably already know, but you know, it's never too late to kind of actually ask what data science is. I don't think I've ever made a video where I explicitly explain what the field is. So to me, data science is a multidisciplinary approach to problem solving. So it's not about any one tool you use. And this person asked, is it programming? So data science is decidedly not programming. I think it's the most advanced way for us to solve problems in 2020, maybe going forward. So you take in elements of computer science, of math, and then also of business logic, and you tie them all together to answer some of the most difficult problems that you have there, based on a lot of data that's out there. So I look at programming as one component of it, and programming and the math, they're both just tools that you use to solve problems that you have. You know, in a business setting, it's generally to make money or maximize profit or lower costs. So data science is so much more than just programming. It's so much more than just math. It's so much more than the business logic. The sum of these parts are a lot bigger than you know. In this case, 1 + 1 = 3 instead of just being those things in isolation. So I think that that's hopefully a pretty good and clear definition of what this field really is. The next thing that I would like to look at is what role is a good start for entry in this field. This person has a master's in computer science and a certificate in data science here soon. So I think that there's really 4 ways to actually get into this field. Let me highlight this so I don't forget. So there's 4 ways to get into this field. So the first is the very least likely way to get into this field is you go through school. You can graduate undergrad, master's, PhD, and you're able to find a position, you know, in data science. This is like the 0.0001%, but it's not as unlikely if you have a PhD. But you have to go through a lot of school, gain a lot of experience that way. So you apply through the normal process and you get in. If you're in college, the most likely way to get in is through doing a couple internships and then actually getting a job with one of the companies that you interned with. That to me is the highest percentage way to get in from undergrad without having to do too much extra stuff. Obviously, you still really need a strong project portfolio. You need a lot of other really solid coursework, and you need to be able to kind of talk your way in. There's a huge communication element of data science. The third way is through like a software engineering route. And so, for example, this person with a master's in computer science, that's probably the best route for them to take. You work as a software engineer, and either at work or in your free time, you're doing data science. So I always think of it as like you have software engineering on this side, and you have like the analyst work on this side. And if you take either one of those roles, you should always start trying to creep towards the other one to learn those skills. So if you can show that in your work as a software engineer, you've done a little bit of implementation of machine learning models even at your company, you can ask for those types of roles. You can do some of those like because you're excited about it at work and find opportunities to do it. That's the best way to start picking up those skills and to tell a really compelling story about why you should make that transition or why someone should hire you as a data scientist. In addition to that, I think that it's really important from the business side, if you're coming in the fourth way, which is an analyst role, to do the exact same thing. So maybe you're doing a lot of stuff in Tableau, you're making visuals, you're doing cool stuff. You want to start picking up more and more of that Python programming. You want to start learning some of these other tools. And again, like the best way to show this is in projects or in being able to do that on the job. So to this person, I think that they should probably go the software engineering route and continue going up that path. So let's take one question here, if I can find my mouse, from the actual live chat. So, okay, so the first question is, what should a beginner second-year student focus on? So I would focus, in that case, really on getting internships, but also on learning programming. So I think that the first step in learning data science is learning some basic Python or R, and you can start implementing the machine learning algorithms even without a full understanding of the math if you understand the programming. So you absolutely need to learn the math, you need to understand these fundamentals, but the quickest way in my mind to do that is through implementation, and you can do that quickest by learning some programming. So the next is, would you answer questions here in chat? And the answer is, I'll do it in the video if you ask the questions in the chat. So the next one here is, which has been asked a lot of times, I see Fahim is very eager. So what's the difference between AI versus deep learning versus data science? So in general, data science, again, is this problem-solving approach where you're leveraging a lot of different tools. I think that I actually have a video on the difference between AI, ML, and data science, but basically there's a lot of overlap between data science and AI. So I think there's a hierarchy. You have data science, and within data science there's like machine learning, there's decision sciences, and there's also this like business knowledge, right? In AI, you have some more like automated systems, but there's this, what's it called? A Venn diagram where there's overlap between the machine learning parts of data science and the machine learning parts of AI. And that's where deep learning falls. So deep learning is just the use of neural nets, basically, right? And neural nets are used in both data science and AI. In my personal opinion, AI is focused more on general intelligence. Like machine learning, you can have specific intelligence. But general intelligence is something that can do multiple things, right? So if I build a model to predict like housing prices, right? That's a specific intelligence. But if I build a model that tells me everything about the housing market, including the prices, including whatever it is, that's a more generalized intelligence. And then the most generalized intelligence is replicating how a human brain functions. And that's what true AI is. And that is a little bit deviant from what data science is, because we're really only focused on solving specific problems in data science. I hope that answer is satisfactory. I think I kind of rambled there just a little bit, but we'll see. All right, so the next thing is, to what extent does this data scientist need to know the mathematics behind the algorithms? Behind the machine learning concepts, for example, eigenvectors in PCA. I had such a tough time figuring out eigenvectors in PCA, but I did have to learn them. I don't think when you're beginning in data science, you need to understand the logic behind the machine learning algorithms. But by the time you become a data scientist, or you can get a job, you should understand the logic behind at least a couple of them. So I recommend understanding how linear regression works, how like gradient descent in general. That's really important. The PCA eigenvector stuff, you can do that later. But like understanding how naive Bayes works and the math behind conditional probability, and how like a decision tree, how entropy works. So as you go up the chain of data scientists, you could probably get a job as a data scientist with just an understanding of how those three algorithms work. But you have to be able to implement the other ones. In addition to that, by the time you're a senior data scientist or you're a lead data scientist, you should have at least derived all of the algorithms or built them all in Python, because that's how you understand at a fundamental level how they're constructed and how the inputs go in. So in the short term, you don't need to learn the advanced mathematics to at least get that first data science role, but you're going to have to learn it eventually. All right, let's see here. Okay, so the next one is an interesting question. So the last decade was about social media and the e-commerce movement. From an insider's perspective that I have, do you feel like data and analytics will depict a parallel growth for this upcoming decade? So I would argue that, that growth has actually paralleled the social media and e-commerce movement. A lot of data science is being used in both of those domains. I think that, I expect data science and data to continue to grow, but what I expect to grow even more is kind of the automation of a lot of these processes. So I've talked a little bit in some of the podcasts that I've been doing with Krish Duvall and Shannon about where the future of data science is going, and I think it's going in kind of two directions. So you're either going to be more of a consultant and you're going to be explaining data science to business stakeholders, where you're kind of like explaining the transition, because a lot of people won't use something that they're afraid of or that they don't understand. On the other side is you're going to be implementing a lot of these algorithms, machine learning algorithms, and understanding how to automate these processes. So that automation aspect is something that I think is going to be really transformational for the field. I don't think people will lose jobs. I think that there'll still be plenty, because even with automation, you still have to learn how the automation works. You still have to understand the underlying mechanisms. So there's potentially even more opportunity in this field with that coming. So the next thing is how to get a data scientist job at big companies like Google or Facebook. I actually have a really cool interview coming up with Jay Feng, who's his YouTube handle is, I think, Data Science J. He has a product called Interview Query, and he's basically gone and done a ton of mock interviews, sourced a lot of questions from like the FANG companies and things like that. I have a video with him coming out in a couple weeks where I talk about this specific topic. I think the big thing is that the larger companies have a bit more of a standardized interview process, and your best bet is to just do your homework, go on Glassdoor, figure out how these processes work, but also try and network your way in. Through some research I've been doing, it looks like almost 80% or more jobs come through referrals. To me, that was like astounding, right? I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people, and almost every data scientist I've talked to either got referred by someone at the company or through a recruiter. So I would keep that in mind when you're applying to any job, but specifically these bigger companies. So I'll answer this one, then I'll hop back into the comment section. So, sir, I want you to make vlogs. He thinks I'd be good at making vlogs. Love to know what you guys think. I in this channel at least, I prefer to stick to the data science domain, but I do have some more like vlog style videos. I have a day in the life video, actually 2 of them. I really enjoyed making them. They just haven't gotten as much traction, so I was kind of staying away and sticking to my bread and butter, but I'm always open to making more and diverse content. I think down the road, I'd definitely be open to making a more kind of personal channel, where I talk about some of my interests, some of my kind of life philosophy. I don't think I've gotten far along enough in life to really give people life advice, but I do really enjoy reading books about personal development, and I've shared that a little bit on this channel, but I'd love to know what you guys think about if you'd like to see more of that, probably on a different channel. I want to keep the content very data science and sports analytics focused here. All right, so let's jump back into the chat. So one question is, do I accept projects in R also? The answer is yes. I won't be as good at reviewing them though. Let's see here. people are excited about my videos on Kaggle. That's what I like to hear. Let's see here. All right, so here's a good question. It's how to have a good mentor for data science. So I think mentorship is important, but there's also so many resources online that can help you find the answers to your questions. I think that you should be self-sufficient in data science before you go and really reach out for a mentor. I don't think I've ever run into a data science problem that hasn't been solved on Stack Overflow before. Like if you search long enough, you'll be able to find your answers. And a lot of the time at companies, as a data scientist, you're actually the subject area in your field. There's no one you can reach out to within your company that knows more about data science than you. So inherently, you're always going to have to find answers for yourself, and learning that skill is so important. I think mentorship is great. I think that you should really try and build a relationship with a mentor. So a mentorship is not, hey, will you be my mentor, and I'll you'll help me and I won't do anything in return. Mentorships are relationships. So I don't personally have time right now to mentor anyone, but if I did, I would also like to learn from them about something. It doesn't have to be about data science. It doesn't have to be, it could be about social media. It could be about how to work YouTube better. It could be any of these things. And you should think about what value you can provide to someone else in exchange for this mentorship in return. I really recommend never just ask someone to be your mentor. You should always kind of take a slow approach, get to know them. Over time, you build this relationship, and you never call it a mentorship, but you both know that it's a mentorship at a certain point. I hope that makes sense. You always want to be careful with these things. These, any mentors I've had, they've always been like friends, and I personally never had a data science mentor. It's something maybe in the future I'd look into if I wanted to take a different route, but that's kind of my thoughts on that process there. Let's see here. Still a little behind. All right, so can you talk more about networking and how to network into a company? So yes, so I would look on Facebook and on meetup.com to try and find data science or programming meetups near you. I would recommend really going to these events and just trying to talk to people. It's not, networking is about never revealing that you're looking for a job and having people basically offer you opportunities. So the idea is that you come off, this is a practiced skill. You talk about your projects, talk about the things you're working on, and if the opportunity presents itself, where they say, we're looking for someone on our team, do you know anyone? You could say, actually I'm looking, whatever it might be. If you establish really good relationships with people, if they believe that you're genuinely interested in learning the field, you're genuinely interested in them, these opportunities eventually just present themselves. And I know that that's kind of amorphous and it seems not very concrete, but you look at, for example, the YouTube stuff that I've been doing, is that I've been really working hard on just producing good content. I've been sharing it with my friends and whoever would listen, and I've gotten an incredible amount of reach out and feedback from it. And you're going to have such an easier time getting a job if you're finding a way to produce good stuff and have people come to you rather than you always going to them. I think that something really valuable to learn is that once you get the first data science job, it is so much easier to get another data science job, because you've proven that you can be a data scientist and someone has already hired you. And so recruiters will start reaching out to you all the time, and it can be kind of overwhelming. But at the same time, that's definitely a good thing. So let's move back to these questions here. So how to get started on Kaggle competitions, especially for beginners. So the first thing I would recommend is just maybe do the Kaggle micro courses. They give you a really good start for getting into that field, or using the platform in general. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to start making more videos on Kaggle, and I'll probably do a couple just beginner projects to get people familiar with how the system works, and also some like very basic analysis. I think that that should really help. The next thing is how to get started doing freelance data analysis on Upwork. So my recommendations there kind of mirror what I said about the networking. I got my first freelance project through just some connections. I reached out to a company. I didn't have any plans of actually doing work for them. In Chicago, they had a really cool product that I was interested in. I reached out to the CEO. We grabbed some drinks, we talked, and it turned out that he had a really cool use case for data science, but one of the his data scientists recently left his team. So there was an opportunity to build out this project, and I went in and we negotiated, we got a pretty good deal. I always recommend doing your early work for free. So if you can get a client that you do legitimate work for, it's okay if the first one is free, especially if you're just starting out. So to build a portfolio of work, if you've worked for someone, just like getting that first data science job, it's really a lot easier to get that second client or that second person that will pay you a little bit more or a lot more potentially. In Upwork, I think it works the same way. I'd recommend making an Upwork profile. I don't personally use Upwork, so take this with a grain of salt. But build out a portfolio there. Maybe go through interpersonal connections to get your first couple purchases on that platform. And just scale out from there. It's all about just getting the first one. I think that that's kind of the most important thing here. The next one is, to what extent is obtaining a degree in information technology valuable in relevant towards data science? Honestly, information technology has a very varied meaning. In the US, in the companies I've worked, you think of like the IT guy, right? And my dad always tells people, he's like, oh, my son has a master's in IT. And I'm like, Dad, it's computer science, come on, man. And so like, if you're learning programming, if you're learning math, any degrees where you show that, that's going to be valuable. In the case of IT, if you're doing a lot of hardware stuff, probably not as relevant. I mean, I don't know that much about computers. I'm going to go try and build one right after I move. That's going to be interesting. Maybe I'll make a video on that. I think that would be fun. But I don't think it would hurt you if you're doing anything technical. But I would just make sure you build out your portfolio with some projects again. Well, let's do this next one, and I'll jump back over to the chat here. So, how do you build your credibility in the data science industry aside from doing Kaggle projects? So, you can do other projects on your GitHub that are not Kaggle projects. You can also actually do some volunteer work. That's probably the best way. Anything where you simulate real-world data science experience, I think is really valuable. If you present your work at conferences, you present your work to other people, that's always a great way to get credibility. And the last one is to actually contribute to some open source communities. I think that even if it's small, again, in one of those podcasts that I did with Krish Dubal and Shannon, Krish brought up a really cool example of, like someone just found a spelling error and he like corrected it and merged it. And like that's a legitimate change. That's a legitimate contribution to one of these communities that still helped. I mean, even if it was small and semantic, not programming related, you can still say that you've merged something into that community. So those are the general approaches I would take to build credibility there. You can also get academic credentials, but I think that anything that's actually doing data science work holds a bit more weight. So, let's see here. So, someone asks, is citizen data scientist? Let me find out where this was again. Is a citizen data scientist, is this role taking flight? and a good stepping stone to venture into a data science journey. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I think yes. So if you're doing your own data science projects and you're sharing them and contributing to the broader community, they absolutely can lead to roles. So I talked again with Jay, also known as Data Science Jay. I've talked with Import Data, who's actually in the chat. Check out both of their channels. They have a lot of really good content. Jay about jobs, Import Data about like starting out in the field and learning. But both of them have experience where they built projects and it's eventually led to something. So for Jay, he did a project that was actually just open source that he thought was fun, and it ended up on the news, and then that eventually got him a job. So if you're producing stuff that's really valuable to a broader community and that gets picked up, this can 100% lead to a position for you. So what's my advice for total beginners with no background in any data science? All right, I would start small. I'd start to learn a little bit of programming. I would maybe start to brush up on a little bit of statistics, and then just pick up a little bit more as you go. I think the Kaggle micro courses are really good. I highly recommend that. I also think any of the general data science certificates are very good. As I've mentioned before, I have a relationship with 365 Data Science. I'm happy to share like a discount code or something if people would value that, if that's something that they'd be interested in. They have some great, well, again, all of these courses have some great beginner Python and beginner stat stuff, which is where someone should foundationally start. Let's see here. How can a graduate student with a bachelor degree in economics get a PhD in data science and machine learning? So I've actually looked at this. I don't think there are many PhDs in data science and machine learning. Like usually you're either getting a PhD in computer science, a PhD in statistics, a PhD in economics. There's some PhD in data science programs that are out there, but they're not well developed yet. I don't even know if I would recommend really getting a PhD in general. I mean, PhDs take a lot of time. They're a lot of work. You don't make a lot of money. If you're working for whatever your stipend is as a PhD, let's say it's $30,000 a year in the US, you could be making double that as an analyst or triple that as a software engineer for 3 years, right? And that's the same, you're making way more money and you have the same probability of transferring into a data science role, with the skill set you're developing. So I think PhDs are fine if you love the research process, but you just have to take all the tests and you have to have a good GPA and you have to interview well. I mean, I don't know if the PhD process is overly complicated. Again, I don't have a PhD. I have 2 master's degrees, which I probably spent too much money on, and I have a lot of student debt around. So again, I don't even know if I would recommend those. All right, let's go back to the questions over here. So how do you deploy a project with a bit of a dynamic nature in mind? Not the usual portfolio page, creating new apps and graphics. So most data science projects are deployed as API endpoints. So basically someone creates a front end and they hit your API and it returns data that you want. So if you want to make it dynamic, that's probably the best way, is that you can hit this from anywhere and it returns whatever output that is related to the input that's coming in. You can also schedule when it retrains. You can have like a microservice on Amazon do that. It updates it fairly frequently. That's generally how I would recommend going about that. If anyone else has some input there or something that I overlooked, I think that I'd be happy to share that information and pass it on. So the next one, I'm pretty sure this one is a joke by one of my friends, but how are your friends and family handling your fame? I don't think anyone in my family thinks I'm famous, or my friends think I'm famous. I don't even think I'm famous. I'm just enjoying the community here, and I'm enjoying being able to have a voice and to share my past experience. Obviously, I know how hard it is to break into the data science field or the sports analytics field, and hopefully the videos that I'm making are making it easier for you guys to break in and also learn this stuff. So, even if I have a gajillion followers one day, or subscribers one day, which I sincerely doubt, that's still like the mission of what this channel is. So let's crank out these last two, and then for the remainder I'll go into these last three, and then for the remainder I'll just go through the comments, the live chat here, and answer questions there. So what do you suggest to someone? I apologize for the sirens. I'm still in Chicago. I'll wait for them to pass though. Okay, so what do you suggest to someone who wants to devote time to study necessary material for data science through projects when they're already working a full-time job? So I think that this is very valuable and it's relevant to me. So I was working full-time when I was doing my master's degree, when I was learning data science. And, there's two ways. So you can either try to integrate data science with your current workflow. So you look for projects within your company where you think you can leverage some of these techniques. I don't know if I've ever been at a job where 100% of the time I was working on something. Like, there's usually some downtime and you can try and mix it in there. The other thing is, like, you have nights and weekends. I mean, I was, again, like, going to school full time and working full time when I did my master's degree, and like, it sucked, but I learned it all. Or not all of data science, that's impossible, but I learned quite a lot. What I would recommend is just carving out a time that you're going to study every day or every couple days and sticking to it. Just scheduling that time, blocking it on your calendar, and making sure you do it is the best way to kind of stick with these things. I'd also recommend kind of this like tiny habits approach, where every day you're at least writing like one line of code. That should be possible even if you feel like crap, even if you're already in bed. It's like, oh, I have to write this one line of code and do it. That keeps everything fresh. That means you don't get rusty. The last question from Twitter is, how much do you see data science and the data analytics industry growing over the next 5 to 10 years? I think it'll grow a tremendous amount still. I mean, we use data science, we use analytics. There's data on every industry. So like every possible industry out there has opportunities for data science to be integrated. And there are plenty of companies within these industries that have all these opportunities that aren't leveraging data yet. So once everyone realizes how important this is, and once everyone realizes how to actually like integrate this, there's going to still continue to be a tremendous boom probably in the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm not worried about this slowing down. I think the field will evolve, like how I'd mentioned before, into kind of more consulting and then more machine learning engineering type branches. But I had a call with someone yesterday where he talked about kind of auto ML and how these algorithms work, and it's fascinating. But you still have to do feature engineering. You still have to do data manipulation. You still have to make the data cooperate, and that's part of the fun. Is that there's this problem-solving approach that, as I've mentioned before, is multidisciplinary. So that it's not a single target. We can't just optimize this one thing. There are always these two other elements that we have to improve upon and mix together. So the last question from the kind of either Twitter or the community is, what soft skills are required as a data analyst, data scientist, or other roles? And I think that's really, really important. So I think the most important skill or something that I've tried to cultivate as much as possible is being able to clearly communicate complex concepts in simple terms. A lot of the times as a data scientist, you're going to be communicating with business stakeholders, and they're not going to understand like even how like a regression works or a random forest works. You're going to have to explain what the outcomes are and explain what the value is of what you're doing. And that there is some artistry in that, but there is something that you can practice related to that. The other soft skills that I recommend are becoming really good at asking questions and listening. in order to create relationships, you really have to listen to what other people are saying. And admittedly, this is something I probably need to work on. I like to talk. I'm not as much about listening, but it is something that's important and something that I am working on. You should also learn to tell really good stories. People, when they're making decisions, care less about the data and more about how it's delivered, which is a little bit sad, but at the same time, that's just how our brains work. So if you can tell a really compelling story about why your analysis should be used in practice, that'll go a very long way. And that goes for the job search and the job process as well. If you can tell a really, really good story about why this company should hire you, there's a lot higher chance that you actually land the job that you want. So that's kind of where I'd leave it with some of those different questions. Now let's go, we're going to go back to full screen here, and we'll answer some more of these chat questions. So one question is, do you have boot camps that you recommend? So I do not have any that I recommend. I've never been to a boot camp, so I don't think it's fair for me to recommend or say that they're trash or anything like that. I think that the only way to evaluate these is through like pretty careful research, because they're all different. I would look, one, at how much they cost, two, about what the exit opportunities look like and what you'll be getting. And then I would also match that to your own personal skill set, your personal goals. I made a video about, which should you choose, bootcamp, certificates, or self-study, and I recommend checking that out, because hopefully that'll answer that question in a bit more depth. So yeah. Okay. So someone's asking, I'm thinking of doing a master's. I got offered one at a good university in data science, but do you think it's worthwhile waiting a year to get into a better university? So that's a weird question. So in data science, it's a good question, but I found that in data science, in these technical fields, it's less important where you went and it's more important what you've done. So if any of these places give you an opportunity to get an internship or get really cool research experience or to produce really cool projects, then it's probably worthwhile. When I was in consulting before, you had to come from a target school, and it really mattered where you were coming from. But in this point in time, it frankly doesn't. So if you're getting if it's less expensive and you still have good opportunities and you're learning things you want to learn, then I think it's perfectly fine to go with the school that you've gotten an offer from. Thank you, Elena, for telling me that I'm a good listener. I really appreciate that. All right. What do you think about random effects models? Do you use these often? Is it worth getting into? I don't have too much exposure to random effects models. I do really think randomness is important in data science, though. I do a lot of Monte Carlo simulation in my work, and I recommend kind of exploring some of those. That's something that isn't a traditional data science tool, but it's very, very valuable in understanding how scenarios might play out. What should a novice learn first, statistics or computer science? I would say probably, I wouldn't learn all of computer science. I learn programming. I've talked a little bit in blog posts and some other stuff about this concept of minimum viable knowledge for data science. And to me, you should learn just enough to be able to do your first project. So that's enough programming and enough statistics to actually start working on something. And then you learn so much more when you're actually doing this stuff hands-on and then supplementing it with things that you don't know. Do I need an intern? I would love to be a Unfortunately, right now I do not need an intern, but if that does change, I will let everyone know in regard to that. So what courses for data science would you recommend, especially if your company would pay for you to take them? I've, personally took pretty much all of my data science courses as either free or through my master's degree. I've heard good things about pretty much all the courses that are out there. The ones on Coursera, the ones on EDX, all of them are good. What matters more is to just actually start somewhere. Again, I have this relationship with 365 Data Science. I'm happy to share some discounts there. That's a pretty solid platform for learning all of this stuff. If it doesn't matter how much, cost-wise, if your company would pay for them, you might as well opt for one of the more expensive ones. Again, I think pretty much all of them are comparable in what you actually learn. So how do you know if you're well equipped or valuable enough to apply in a company? What benchmark do you need? I pretty much always recommend that you just study and you go interview, right? Even if you bomb one interview, you learn for the next interview. And the best way to figure out if you're ready is to test yourself in a real environment. Maybe not don't apply to your dream company before you feel like you've prepared enough, but taking a couple interviews at companies that you might not be as excited about is absolutely the best way to find out this question. I think that almost nobody feels like they're prepared enough. I mean, I've gone into job interviews where I was I did a lot of practice questions, I did all this stuff, and I still didn't feel like I was ready. I think that's a personal feeling. But in this sense, I think that, again, the best way is through true trial and error here. Stephen C. says, I look like I've lost weight. Looking slick. Thank you. I appreciate that, Stephen. I just haven't been eating, No, just kidding. Let's see here. So, how much data structures do you need for an interview? I think you should be familiar in data science with most of the basic data structures. You should understand how, for example, arrays perform differently than lists, because that's something you'd be using a lot in data science. I think understanding how linked list works and queues and things like that is also relevant, but I've never asked one of those questions in an interview personally. I don't think that they're that common. If you're going on Glassdoor before your interview and you're seeing that these things are being asked, you should probably brush up on them, but I wouldn't worry about them too much. Let's see here. So is solving the Titanic problem enough to apply to a company? No. I recommend having basically 3 to 4 projects that are fairly unique to you. If you're an intern, maybe having a couple of projects that you did for school that aren't that unique are fine, but you generally want to have projects that every classroom doesn't do. I mean, I've most courses that teach data science do the Titanic or the minced number data set or the real estate problem, right? You want to differentiate yourself. You want to do everything you can to make it clear that you're valuable and you're different to the company. So I would, again, try to get 3 or 4 different projects, preferably one on classification, one on clustering, and one on regression, and then one on either deep learning, like NLP, or some computer vision type stuff. I think that at the very minimum, that's kind of what the threshold is, and that's what I see when I interview a lot of people. So is 365 Data Science in Udemy? Yes, it is. They also have their like a monthly subscription platform that I think is cheaper, and you get access to all of their stuff. So that's also a pretty good option. Ken, I don't have a bachelor's, but I'm a software engineer for 4 years. I have pretty decent education in math. I've left 2 years behind in bachelor's. Is it a problem for data science position? Um, Honestly, my belief, and I think the belief of quite a few companies, is that if you can do the work, it doesn't matter if you have a degree or not. I think it'd be harder for you than someone who has finished their bachelor's degree, but I don't think it'd be impossible. It's just finding the right fit, the right match, and doing that through networking is probably the most effective way. Let's see here. So, do you believe that data scientists will be substituted by machines with artificial intelligence in the future? Not in my lifetime, let me put it that way. I think that there are some automation things, but there's always going to be other work around data science that is not necessarily automatable. So can you point towards an example of a weekly project that beginners can work on for practice? So maybe a good weekly practice for beginners is to choose one algorithm and to get it to run on a data set. So, if you go every week and the first week you do a linear regression, the second week you do a multiple linear regression, the third week you do a support vector regression, the fifth week you do random forest regression, and then maybe the sixth week you do like ridge regression or lasso regression, and then maybe like in the following subsequent couple months you start doing classification. Each one of those concepts is something you should be able to understand in a week, and then over the course of a year, 52 different algorithms you have a pretty good understanding of. So you can also tie those together and build that into like one larger project. We're using the same data set for all of these. I think that would be a very powerful and compelling project to show your knowledge. So someone's asking, is the 365 data science course on Udemy any good, better than Jose Ortilla's? I haven't taken Jose's course, so I don't think it's fair for me to answer that question. Again, I think the 365 data science course is really good. I think it's better for beginners. Some of like they're still working on improving some of like the intermediate content, like the different types of algorithms, but they also have like good kind of deep learning stuff. So I might actually work with them to try and build out some more content there, which would be pretty fun. So what topics of programming do I need to know to be job ready? So I'm going to answer maybe 2 more questions and then call it because we're almost at an hour. So programming, I think you should be familiar with pretty much all of the basics of programming. So understanding how variables work, understanding how loops work, understanding how maybe recursion a little bit just in case, and how classes work in Python, and then how the different libraries that you use, pandas, numpy, scikit-learn, TensorFlow, PyTorch, whatever it might be, matplotlib also. Okay, so last question. Oh my goodness, it's moving so fast. Okay, so this is, I think, a good question to end on. So I just landed my first job as a data engineering intern. Any advice to calm my nerves on the first couple days? So I think with any job, or even with learning the data science field, it's easy to get overwhelmed, right? Like data science is such a big field. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to be nervous about. But whenever you take these things, your job, for example, or even, again, data science, for example, and you break them down into just small parts, they're really digestible, and you're not going to get scared of these things, right? I would just break the day down into each hour, take it an hour at a time, and treat it as a learning experience. Like data science, if it's not fun for you, if it's not fun to learn, data science probably isn't going to be like an incredibly exciting career for you. You have to wake up and like really want to learn this stuff and want to be able to apply this stuff. It is about changing your mindset and looking at everything like a learning experience and looking at it like an opportunity. There's plenty of times, like this stream, for example. This is my first stream. I'm obviously, well, I was a little nervous when I started. And that's, but I look at it like, hey, this is a learning experience. If it doesn't go great, I can just delete it if I need to. If it does go great, I learned how like this OBS software works. I learned how the YouTube streaming stuff works. Like, this is fun. If I do it again, I can even do it better next time. So kind of treating all of the problems like that, whether it's in your job or in learning data science, I think that's kind of a mindset shift that will probably help you down the road. There's no reason to be nervous. I mean, people are always so hyper aware of their own condition, of how nervous they are or what they're doing, that they forget that like most people are more nervous about themselves than they are of you. Like your interviewer is probably nervous, like, oh, what's this kid gonna think of me, as much as you're nervous of what they're gonna think of you, which is pretty crazy to think about, but I mean that's how we're all wired. So I really want to thank everyone for tuning in. I mean, again, this has been such an awesome experience with YouTube so far. It's been so awesome connecting and communicating with all of you guys. I hope that continues. I hope that I can really continue to grow here, and I just want to make sure and hope that the information I'm providing is useful and helpful. And if I'm wrong about things, let me know. If something isn't as constructive, isn't valuable, let me know. I'm always trying to improve this stuff, and this is a really good learning experience for me as well. So on that note, again, I want to thank everyone, and I'll see you in my next video on Monday.